Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is my colleague, Forbes staff writer Zach Everson. Zach, I'm excited to talk to you about your recent reporting. Here's the title. Trump's SPAC says its financial statements through 2022, quote, should no longer be relied upon. Before we break down everything that means, can we talk about this merger between Trump Media and Technology Group and Digital World, which has been in the works now for 18 months?
So Digital World Acquisition Corporation is a SPAC, which stands for Special Purpose Acquisition Company. And it was essentially formed as a shell company with the purposes of then buying another company later. And it's a maneuver companies do to make it a little bit easier to be floated on the stock market. So this group formed, and then shortly thereafter, it announced that it wanted to acquire Trump Media and Technology Group, which is the Trump's business that owns Truth Social.
And Digital World has had a really rocky year and a half, both with the SEC inquiries as well as the DOJ one. Can you walk us through those investigations?
Right. Well, there are a lot of rules where how these companies are allowed to talk to each other during the whole merger courtship. And the thought is that they might have been talking a little bit before they were supposed to. SEC is investigating, DOJ is investigating. We know this because the company admitted it in some of its filings to the SEC, and they've been seeking communications between officials with both companies. They've subpoenaed board members as well, and Digital World has actually sacked its CEO in the last few months.
Did they sack the CEO over this potential talking beforehand? And how bad is it to potentially talk before a merger is announced and goes through?
They did not state a reason for why they sacked the CEO, so we don't know. I have reached out; they haven't responded. It's difficult to say. SPACs are a relatively new investment vehicle, so there's not a lot of other experience to go with on whether they're communicating or not beforehand. Off the top of my head, and this is not my beat, but this is the only company I can think of that's going through a SPAC that's having these issues. But again, I'm focused more on politics than I am on corporate mergers.
So let's bring it to present day now. What happened to Digital World's financial statements through 2022 that the SPAC deemed them unreliable? Here's what the company said. They said there was an error, quote, accounting for certain expenses. So what exactly does that mean? Can you read the tea leaves for us? Is that just a clerical error, or is there potentially something a little more nefarious here?
It sounds like it's a little bit more, I don't want to say nefarious, but serious than just, like, oh, yeah, we forgot to carry the two over in our ones place, a year ago. And as a result, every number we've reported has since been in an error. Because one of the things they also said that they found, quote, a material weakness exists in the company's internal control over financial reporting. And that sounds serious. So that sounds like it's something right at the core of how they were reporting their financial data, that they are then going to come forth with a plan for how they can rectify that and share that information with the SEC and ostensibly the public.
Zach, going through financial statements for companies is not my beat. So I do want to ask you, how normal is this? Is this a common occurrence to say, oops, error, don't look at those financial documents, they're unreliable, let's correct the issue here?
Again, not my beat either. It is, I did talk to some people with more experience covering this, though, and they said it is very unusual for a company to come forward and say this. And one of the things they also announced was that they are at risk of being delisted from the NASDAQ exchange for failing to file a report on time. And that is the second consecutive period that they've had to report that their report has been late. And now they're resubmitting them all again to make up for the errors that they found. So we're going to get a lot of documents from Digital World at some point in the near future.
Let's talk about that delisting, the potential threat for a second time in a row to be delisted from the NASDAQ. Is this, like I said, common practice, a usual occurrence? Is this unprecedented, somewhere in between? Can you walk us through that?
It happens. It's companies might miss a deadline for some reason, or they may have to go back and restate earnings for some issue. But to see it happen twice in a row, and oh yeah, everything we've reported so far is wrong too, is unusual.
So how can Digital World evade getting delisted?
They have to go ahead and submit the information, and they have to reach out to NASDAQ. And if NASDAQ does decide to delist them, that there's an appeal process they can then go through to prevent that from happening. So they have the company has 60 calendar days to submit a plan to regain compliance, and when we'll find out what NASDAQ does shortly thereafter.
As we said, it has been definitely a rocky 18 months for Digital World with those investigations both from the SEC and DOJ. And it's been 18 months since this merger was announced. The merger has not gone through yet. Are these investigations, is this news slow walking that merger?
Yeah, I mean, the president's company, they called it inexcusable obstruction. They referred back in September of 2022 that the merger hadn't been approved yet. So, they do need to rectify these issues before they're going to get the green light to proceed. And also, those investigations are probably going to have to play out a little bit further.
We're talking about Digital World, and but Trump media has also been in the headlines recently. The last time you and I talked, which was last week, it was about a lawsuit between Trump Media Group as suing the Washington Post. Can you give us the highlight reel of that for those who haven't seen that video?
Sure. So they are suing. Trump Media is suing the Washington Post for $3.8 billion, which I believe makes it the most money Trump is requesting in any of his current lawsuits. And they're alleging that they're alleging there were some mistakes in the Washington Post reporting, and that those mistakes wiped out about $2.8 billion in value of the company. And then they're asking for another $1 billion in punitive damages. There hasn't been any progress in the suit since we last spoke. I just checked the docket earlier today, and it was just about trying to serve the Washington Post was the only little update that had been there.
Zach, has there been any response between Trump Media or Digital World?
No, not this time. We have not heard from either one of those. The last I checked, they may have issued something over the long weekend, but I have not seen it since I started looking. So I've got to imagine they've both been pretty quiet on this one. Digital World is, if they come forward with any information, it most likely is going to need to be through an SEC filing. The thought process being that will make it available to all potential investors at the same time, rather than, giving a heads up to some media outlet and letting them report it before it shows up in an SEC filing.
Did these financial statement errors take this merger potentially 10 steps back? What's next here? What do we have to look for next?
As usual with Donald Trump, we are in uncharted territory. We'll find out about the delisting. They didn't really give a time or potential delisting from NASDAQ. They didn't really give a time frame for when they might resubmit the reports that had the errors. And, they do say that they have up until July 24th to regain compliance with with NASDAQ in terms of just meeting their regular deadlines. So we'll see.
So for those who don't know, Trump Media and Technology Group owns Truth Social, former President Donald Trump's social media platform. When and if this potential merger does go through, will that change anything for Truth Social?
It might. I mean, there'd be new owners involved with it. So who knows exactly what they might want to do with it. Maybe they'll just say, hey, everything on Truth Social is going great. Let's keep it status quo. They may want to pump more money into it. They may have other ideas altogether.
Zach Everson, thank you so much.